Welcome to another episode of Growth Hacker TV. I'm Bronson Taylor, and today I have Michia Rohrssen with us. Michia, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Big fan of what you guys are doing here, so happy to be on.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Michia, you are the CEO of Prodigy, a new startup, but a lot of people know of you because you're the former head of growth at VentureBeat.
Yes.
And I'm excited about this interview because you have some fun stories. You've been involved in some unique things. So this
Yes.
isn't going to be one of those interviews with like one theme that they stay on the whole time. This is going to be one of those interviews we're going to be all over the place talking about all kinds of cool stuff. And I think whoever's listening is going to learn a lot along the way. So you ready to jump in?
Absolutely, man. Let's do it.
All right. First off, you think that your computer science degree has turned out to be more valuable than a marketing degree. Why is that? Because I've heard that before, and I've heard the other side of the argument. I want to know why you think that computer science is so important for marketing.
I think I could be biased here, obviously, but
We
I
all
think
are.
a lot of it comes in the way marketing is shifting right now. And so, there was probably a time when marketing degrees were really useful because a lot of the marketing you were doing was offline and traditional, and just kind of the techniques were very different. But if you look at just the macro economy and also just the way marketing and consumers are going, it's all going online. And so someone that can speak the language of online, who knows online really well, knows the web, and with computer science knows computers, it's just very useful. I mean, I spend all my day on a computer now. And so being able to write quick scripts, whip up some HTML, or just having the knowledge to really dive in and be computer savvy, I think is almost more useful than knowing like the four P's of marketing, which I still don't know.
Was it position, product, promotion, price? See, you got the 4 P's, man.
I really don't know. I couldn't tell you until you told me.
No, that's awesome. It's interesting because when I had on the CEO of Apartment List, he said something similar but in a different way. He said that he was setting up this complicated, Google Ads campaign, and at first he had marketers running the campaigns. And then it just wasn't working. The ROI wasn't there. So then he just found people that were really good at math, and he had them run the Google campaigns. And he said all of a sudden the ROI was there. And he thought, you know what? I need mathematicians, not marketers. Like he made that switch kind of internally, at least for his paid traffic. And that kind of is the first time the thought really got put in my head of like, okay, you might like computer science and math and that kind of stuff, the hard science stuff might be more effective than the soft marketing stuff for what we do now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so formulaic, especially older. It was, the Mad Men era where it's like you come up with one campaign, it's just like groundbreaking. But now a lot of the stuff we do is formulaic. And so just being able to iterate fast and look at the actual numbers rather than just like the big picture can actually be more useful in many ways.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. All right, so let's jump into something fun here. So you had some Facebook ads once that were crazy effective, 10% click-through rate.
Yeah.
For anybody who's used Facebook ads, I don't think I've ever had something with a 10% click-through rate. I mean, I've done some good ones, 4%, 5%, and less than that. 10%, no, never done that. And Facebook actually updated their terms of service to ban your ads specifically. All right, so tell me about that. What'd you do? Why was it so awesome? Why did it get banned?
So I think I was actually looking at the numbers last night. I think it might have actually been as high as like 16% on some of my campaigns for click-through rate. So they were just ridiculous. And so basically it all started. I had the, idea that like Facebook is all about relevance. And so the more targeted your ads are, obviously the higher click-through rates and everything you get. But still so for example, if you get a selection of people that like bodybuilding and you give them a bodybuilding ad, you're gonna get a much higher click-through rate than if you just select random people. So I thought, well, what's the most like ridiculously relevant thing I can do? And so I thought I could actually. The idea was, I'm gonna go make ads that actually mention the person's name in the headline, in the image, in everything. And so what I was doing is I was actually I was using a scraper to scrape the unique IDs of Facebook users. So I'd scrape like all the Mike Williams, and then I would make an ad that said like, "Hey, Mike Williams, you're paying too much for car insurance," because I was like doing work for like Geico and Progressive and all these guys. So it'd be like this big ad. It's super ugly. It had a Chartreuse, the color, which is like this like, really ugly yellow, and then a red background on top of that said, "Hey, Mike Williams, like you're paying too much for car insurance. Click here to save money or whatever." And I was doing lead gen for different insurance companies, and so I made all sorts of different ads with like specific names And I just crushed it. Like I was getting like 10, 15% click-through rates. And I wasn't the only one doing it. So I should say they didn't update their TOS just to ban my ads, but I think a couple other people were doing it as well. But we ran with it for probably like 6 months, and then one day just all my ads were banned. And I looked at the terms of service, and it's like, that's not against your terms of service. And then I went back and they had updated them that day to add. It's like the very last forbidden thing now. You can't put names in the ads. So it was fun while it worked, though.
So that specific tactic is dead. But what's the takeaway? I mean, I think there's still a nugget of truth there that we should take into our Facebook campaigns.
Yeah. So, I mean, well, there's obviously the more targeted, the better. You know, if you can really, rather than trying to do like, oh, like my reach is like 1 million people, so I can just scale this really well. It's better to have maybe 10 campaigns with 100,000 people. And each campaign is different and super targeted to that person.
Yeah.
That's one takeaway. The other takeaway I would say is don't be afraid to break the rules when you're doing online marketing, because if everyone follows the same rules, then it's kind of an even playing field, and I don't like to compete in even playing fields.
Yeah.
I like to have a competitive edge and an advantage.
Absolutely.
So that's the other thing I would say.
You know, I like what you just said about, don't worry about having 1 million people in the audience, because when I set up a Facebook ad, I literally try to get to 1 million people in the audience. That's like my lowest I'm wanting to go. I try to get at least 1 million so the ad doesn't burn out in 2 weeks, Yeah. So what you're saying, though, is let it burn out quicker, but it's so targeted, the ROI is better, and then you just cycle through and do another ad that's also super targeted. And so that's a new way for me to kind of look at Facebook that I don't do right now.
Yeah, so when you're doing these, I mean, I'll make an ad with like 10,000, 20,000 people in it.
See, I stay away from those. I'm like, oh, it'll be done in 2 days, and then what?
So you have to watch your ad frequency, and so what you'll see is if you actually just watch the chart, like the ad frequency stays around like 1, and your click-through rate's way up here, and then as the ad frequency goes up, your click-through rate goes down. And so what you actually have to do if you're doing super micro-targeted like Facebook ads like this is you have to. I've noticed it's not the offer can stay the same, but you have to cycle the copy because people get banner blindness, and so they see the same banner ad. So if you what I do is I'll just create like 30 or 40 banner ads if I know something's working really well, and I'll just cycle through them so that I keep my frequency on the ad low, but I'm still hitting the same target audience pretty regularly.
I gotcha.
But yeah, I mean,
so you keep the copy the same, but you're changing the visual.
Yeah, you can even switch the copy as well, but it's more like you don't want someone seeing your ad 20 times because they just start to ignore it.
Yeah.
But if you throw a new ad and it's a targeted segment, they might convert just because they were ignoring your previous ad, but now this one just catches their eye for whatever reason.
Do you use any of the tools to like create all these variations, like Ad Espresso or any of the competitors out there, or do you just use the Power Editor and kind of do it that? Like, what do you use? Because this is a lot more work than a normal campaign,
Yeah. So I use, I guess you could say, like an army of outsourcers for the graphic design. Like if you're hiring guys for like $10, $20 an hour to just make Facebook ads, they can make like 10, 20 Facebook ads in an hour if you're just swapping out different images.
Yeah.
And then I just use the Power Editor. Okay. It's pretty terrible. Sorry,
it is.
Facebook.
That's what I was wondering.
it's so bad. But it's still better than manually using their front end editor.
Yeah.
So that's the way I do it.
Okay, gotcha. Nice. Yeah. All right, so talk about Facebook ads. Now let's jump into another subject. I told people we'd be all over the place in this one. Yeah. SEO. So not only do you know a little something about Facebook ads, you know a little something about SEO as well. And you were actually doing some tactics that were so successful that not only did Facebook have to change their terms of service, but Google released manual updates to kind of affect the work you were doing on there as well. So walk me through that. This was back in 2011, 2012, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that the specifics won't work anymore. But again, there'll be some bigger takeaway that we can probably learn from it. So what happened there?
Yeah, maybe the biggest takeaway is I like breaking the rules.
Yeah, that's you fit in with the people watching this show, so don't worry.
Yeah. So this was like 2011, 2012, and this is kind of when I don't think we were the first ones to do it, but we became the largest ones to do it. Where private backlink networks were working really, really well. For people who don't know what those are, essentially you have a domain that has like maybe like a PR4, PR6. And it drops for whatever reason. The person forgets to renew it, and so you can buy that domain and just put new content on it, and put links on this domain. And Google doesn't realize that you've switch the host of the domain. So now you have like a free PR6 link to your whatever websites you want.
Now, is that still true? Google still doesn't know when you buy a domain like that, or they figured it out now?
There's still guys doing it. There's certain techniques that you have to use when you're buying them. Private backlink networks are definitely becoming much harder to run these days because this was back 4 years ago when it was working really well.
Yeah.
And for a while we were just doing it. Like we just had hundreds of private backlink sites that we were just putting links on, and no one was really, it was working really well. Everybody was just really happy. But it probably wasn't the most white hat thing, I guess you could say.
It was at least gray hat.
Yeah, it was gray hat. So it's not like we were spamming forums. We were spamming our own sites, basically.
Yeah.
But it was still manipulating the Google algorithm. And so around late 2011, early 2012, Google actually started taking serious steps to basically ban these sites. Probably the biggest one that everyone knew about was Build My Rank. It was a really, really popular link network that had thousands of clients, and all of a sudden Build My Rank just released a blog post one day that said Google actually de-indexed every single domain we have and was shutting down our entire company.
Wow.
And they were the biggest one. And so around that time, and actually a couple months before, there had been signs that something like that was coming. And so one of the other the largest link network, definitely not as well known, but it had 600 agencies using it actually. So it was kind of powering the whole SEO agency world. Hired me as kind of their lead SEO consultant, and basically our job was my job specifically was to kind of figure out Google's every move and make sure that we stayed 2 steps ahead of them. So making sure that our link network was undetectable. Trying to reverse engineer how Google could detect a link network and then alter things so that we could avoid the penalties.
Yeah. Were you able to do that, or is it just too much going against Google?
So we actually were the only link network that I know that never got slapped. We never got de-indexed. We never got. Some of the sites, maybe 10, 20% got hit, but we were able to retain the integrity of the link network. The other part of it was we also were able to retain the brand by expanding the SEO offering. So we stopped doing just link networks and we started doing more holistic things. This was back when guest posting was okay and social bookmarking and all those things.
Yeah.
So we actually expanded the offering and totally Build My Rank shut down. They just killed the entire $1 million business. Whereas this one that I was the SEO consultant for is still around today.
Gotcha.
Still doing really well because they were able to kind of stay ahead of Google.
Yeah.
And also just kind of expand their offering so they weren't so reliant on these kind of abusive tactics.
Okay, so I'm interested because you said your job there was to kind of stay ahead. What are the best practices for staying ahead? Because people watching this that are really into SEO, they're going to be like, all right, what are you reading, or what are you looking at, or what kinds of tests even give you data you need to work off of? Just in general, what do you do to learn the stuff you need to learn?
Yeah. And so a lot of times you can actually, so there's a couple different ways to learn. One is to learn by doing it. So you throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and you see what sticks. But a lot of times you can actually look at what's working now. So you go through the SERPs you want to compete in, search engine ranking pages, and you kind of look at what's ranking now. And then you can go to Ahrefs, Majestic SEO, all these different sites, pull backlinks and see how are these guys actually doing SEO now.
I gotcha.
Because if they're ranking in the top 10 now, it's obviously something that Google's algorithm currently favors.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
And so you kind of reverse engineer what other people are doing that's already working, and then you can build that into your own stuff, and then you can even watch the rankings change over time, so you see the direction the algorithm's trending in, and then kind of work backwards from there as well.
Yeah, that's one way. The way we were doing it was actually we were trying to think we were trying to actually be a step ahead of even the guys that were doing stuff well. And so we were trying to think what are the actual engineering capabilities that Google would have? How could it would just make it impossible for them to algorithmically detect what we're doing. That's what we were trying to do back in 2012. So that's another way if you can.
And that's just kind of using your computer science knowledge. You know what's possible, you know what data they have access to and what they don't, and you're just thinking through how to work with that.
Yeah. So that's another thing too. I guess that's definitely leans towards more of the gray hat world. But if you want to do gray hat or even black hat, you have to step back and think what's actually undetectable by Google.
Yeah.
Or understand that most things you do actually are detectable because they have a lot of smart people working there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Now, on the same topic of SEO, when you were with Motley Rice, you actually allowed you got the phrase asbestos lawyer and asbestos lawsuit in the top 10. You got your pages in the top 10 there, which is a really big deal.
Yeah.
Getting those phrases to your side in the top 10, that's a lot of money there. How did you do that? I mean, what was is it what you just said, just kind of really applying the things you just told us, or what was your game plan there to do that?
Yes, there was a lot of different things going on there. For those who don't know, asbestos lawsuit, asbestos lawyer, these are all like $300 plus CPC terms.
Per click.
Yeah, per click.
Per click. So somebody clicks that word, and someone pays $300.
Yeah, and if you're actually getting a lead for it, basically how much it was worth for us is 1 in 8 leads turn into an actual lawsuit, and the average lawsuit was worth $8 million. So you could look at it as it's worth $1 million to them per lead.
Wow.
So it was a huge deal for them. And when I took the job, I basically, perhaps foolishly, promised that I could get them in the top 10 for these terms within 30 days, and somehow actually managed to do it.
Wow.
So the game plan was really to try to just. This was back in 2011, so there also weren't as many sophisticated SEO players. So I just kind of like stack the cards in as many ways as possible. So we first thing we did is we created dedicated landing pages for this general kind of subject, asbestos lawsuit, asbestos lawyer. And this was back when like URLs was really important. So the URL had asbestos lawsuit in it. The H1 tags. It was actually just really good SEO.
Yeah.
In a market that didn't have good SEO players, essentially.
I gotcha.
That would probably be like the quick summary of it. I mean, we did a lot of cutting edge stuff at the time. Like we were using private backlink networks and all these other things back when they were still working. We had to expand our strategies, obviously, as Google started to crack down on that.
Yeah.
But a lot of it was just, and you still see this. In fact, I can't talk about it too much, but my current startup is kind of doing a similar thing where you go into really kind of like untapped markets, and if you can bring sophisticated tech that the guys in Silicon Valley or any of the startups they know really well, you can dominate really big markets with a lot of money without having to spend, because they're not sophisticated, so they just go on like who spends the most, when it's often who's actually the most clever that wins.
I gotcha. No, that's awesome. All right, so one of the mottos that you say you live by is just to fail and fail often.
Yes.
And you give this great example of failing a lot at VentureBeat.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you had a lot of success there, too. But you failed a lot. And let me see if I got the quote here. In March alone, you failed 31 times and succeeded 2.
Yes.
So tell me why that's a good thing. And just tell me about that mindset, because I agree with that. I feel like most of what I do is a complete failure. But, you only have to be right a couple times to get, to make some really cool stuff happen. So walk me through that.
Yeah, so a lot of people talk about like failing fast as if like that's the best thing to do, and I agree that failing fast is the best thing to do. But people say that, and most people go and they fail like once or twice, and then they go back to what they were doing because they're like, oh, I failed really quickly, that sucked. I guess I should just go back to what I was doing because that was a failure. So I try to think of it as like failing often, whereas like you're constantly just trying new ideas and seeing what's working, and so. For VentureBeat specifically, we were trying to actually increase the number of people registering for the site. So what we found is like a lot of people would read the news. For those who don't know, VentureBeat's a tech news site. So people would read the news and then they'd leave. And we didn't have like a deep level of engagement with them. So we were like, well, how can we get them to engage with our brand more? How can we get them to register, get on our newsletter, and we can actually like communicate with them and follow up and kind of move them to deeper engagement with the brand, including buying things, going to events, things like that. And so basically what we came up with was like, so I guess goes back to my computer science first marketing degree. The old school marketing way would be to like, okay, let's go like do focus groups and like, let's see what they say. And let's like spend like 6 months making this campaign and then we'll launch it. And like either we're like the hot shit in the office because everyone does it and it works really well, or like it fails and everybody hates the marketing department. We just watch and repeat. So I basically said, well, let's look at kind of like every single approach that we can think of that might convert someone to registering, and then let's just try them all. Because VentureBeat has 7 million readers a month, so we can try things really quickly. Yeah,
you do a lot of A/B tests with with the right amount of data there.
Yeah, so a lot of it was A/B testing, And then when I think about A/B testing, there's a saying: you test forest, trees, branches, and leaves in that order.
All right, I've never heard that, so you gotta break it down for me.
Yeah, so it's forest, trees, branches, and leaves. So you test forest first, which is like you test really, really big, drastically different ideas. Once you find the best big idea, then you start testing the trees within that forest. So this could be like different layouts within it. So maybe like totally different strategies. Like one is a landing page for a free report, one's a landing page for a free webinar. Like totally different ideas. Then once you find the best landing page, we'll say it's a webinar, then you start testing the landing page of the webinar itself. That's like a tree. Then the branches would be like maybe the first opening paragraph or the headline. And then like the leaves are like, what's the color of that button? And things like that. And you see a lot of people that like do this backwards. Like, oh, we're going to go test our button colors. But they've never even tested their forests or their trees. And so when you test like leaves, you get small little improvements. And so what we're doing is we're testing forests. We're testing like drastically different ideas. And yeah, we tested 33 of them. And the ones that failed, I won't say they failed as much as they weren't as good as the really big successes. And so like I was just actually calculating the difference. The difference between our worst failure and our best success was 60x.
Wow.
So by testing all these different ideas, if we had just stuck with one, I think we happened to pick the worst one, which is actually, oddly enough, one of my favorite ones. It was the worst one.
That's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah. It would have converted at like 0.04%.
Wow.
And then the best one converted at 2.2%. So I think it's like 55 times better. And so I guess by failing often, it's okay because the home runs are so much better. And we got 2 home runs in March, and that increased our lead volume by 30 times.
Yeah. I love what you just said. I mean, that's the quote. That's the idea of the episode right there. The forest, then the trees, then the branches, and the leaves. Everyone needs to walk away remembering that. Because tell me if I'm wrong, but that keeps you from getting stuck on a local maximum and just not being able to really get the forest right. It puts things in the right order so you don't feel good about an improvement that's not the big win that you could have had.
Yeah. I mean, definitely that's the way to do it. And I actually use this a lot too for those who are in departments with bureaucracy or just like a lot of chefs in the kitchen, I guess. I've been in places this too where I'm working on something and someone's like, oh, well, that should be like this color font or that should be this color font. I'm like, whoa, like back up. Like you don't actually have the data to say which color this should be. So let me just launch my forest and then we'll worry about the leaves like in a month or something.
So you can actually use my forest.
Yeah.
That needs to be the title of your book when you write one about A/B testing. Launch my forest.
Yeah, because especially you get too many people trying to like do tiny little things, and it's like a big pet peeve of mine. It's like let's just focus on the big picture here.
Yeah.
So we can just launch things. Because when you have people focusing on little things, that's kind of going back to like the old school marketing, where it's like let's do focus tests and like figure this out.
Yeah, no, that's
and you don't need to. And today's, just the way online marketing works.
Yeah, we have the data. We might as well use it.
Yeah,
we have the ability to do the exact process you're saying. And that's the thing. Is like old school marketing. It wasn't that they weren't smart enough to do it. It's that they didn't have the ability to, even if they wanted to. It's like it's just now that we really have these tools and we have this information, and so it really changes the game of what marketing is. Not because we're smarter, just because we have better tools in one sense.
Yeah, I mean, and you can even, so one of the cool things I like to do for split testing or testing in general is like, yes, you can test the headline, but what if you just test things like, so rather than going for the best click-through rate on your Facebook ad by testing like different images or things like that, you can also test like what speaks to your audience, like what products. Like you can basically launch Facebook ads with products that don't even exist. And you can send them to a landing page that says, oh, sorry, coming soon, sign up for the waiting list. But now you can actually test which product should we spend time developing.
So it's like a super forest. That's like testing continents or something.
Yeah.
Right? To see what you should even do as a business before you even get to the forest.
So I try to test everything and have data to be like, this is actually what the business should do. Oftentimes before spending time doing. That's just kind of my approach to things.
Yeah. No,
So, yeah.
it's good stuff. I mean, if people are wise, they'll pay attention to what me and you have just been talking about. All right, so tell us what you've been up to now. You're the CEO of Prodigy, so
Yes.
it must be something awesome for you to leave
Yeah.
being the head of growth at VentureBeat, because that's a pretty sweet gig.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us about Prodigy? I know it's behind the scenes. I know it's stealth.
Yeah.
Tell us what you can tell us. And what else are you
Yeah.
up to nowadays?
Yeah, so I'll tell you a little bit about Prodigy. Essentially, so I was super happy at VentureBeat. I should say that I really enjoyed working there.
Well, you have to say
and-
that. So
No, but I really did. But I was just kind of working this fun idea with a friend of mine who had just sold his company last year. We kind of just, we were playing around a lot of different ideas, and we kind of uncovered some really like kind of groundbreaking ad tech stuff in a certain industry that I can't talk about too much. But maybe later. But
There you go.
we ended up just kind of playing around with the idea, and the reason I actually left is because we got investment, and so we're actually closing out our seed round today.
Nice. Congrats.
So yeah, so that was pretty cool. So that, I'm running the company there. We're just starting. We're in the office now that you see in the background. We just moved in Monday, so it's like that's very, very fresh and new.
Yeah.
I don't even have a bank account. I have to go set it up today actually.
Yeah.
But the other thing I've been doing a lot is I've actually tried to so I've been doing marketing and advertising and growth for like 8 years, and I didn't have anyone to actually I didn't go to class to learn it. I learned from working on different ideas and having a really good network of people that I could bounce ideas off of. So I've been trying to kind of actually give back with my time lately. And I've been trying to dedicate about 10% of my time to just advising early stage startups and helping them out, develop growth tactics, help them scale their business, and do cool things like this. So I kind of just talk to guys like you and
Yeah.
kind of share my thoughts on marketing and life, I guess.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how can
Yeah.
people get in touch with you if they want to kind of, touch base with you and, maybe get some input or insight, or maybe be one of
Yeah,
those
yeah.
companies that you give back to?
Yeah, so my email is michiarohrssen@gmail.com. It's michiarohrssen@gmail.com. Feel free to email me, pay me for advice, just want to grab a beer, whatever. I'm pretty open. I love to just meet entrepreneurs, and if I can help them out with anything they're doing,
Yeah.
that's always the coolest part of my day. So
Yeah, well, I'm sure
Yeah.
our audience is going to love that. I mean, after hearing this interview, they're going to be excited they get to email you and talk to you and possibly, have a beer with you. And I think you will hear from some of the people in this audience because I think this has been a great interview. And best of luck with everything with Prodigy. Once you guys have been out and launched and start killing it, ping me, let me know. We'll bring you back on. You can tell us what this cleverness is, and we can dive into it some. And, just keep updated on your success.
yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, well, Michia, thank you so much again for an awesome Growth Hacker TV interview.
Yeah, thank you, man. This is awesome.